Welcome to the Transforming Lives panel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sharmin Prince.
And I'm your other host, Mitzi Dadoon.
And before we continue, just join us in a brief moment of grounding, taking deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Take another deep breath in and hold that breath at the top. And then just let it go gently through your mouth. Hold it again. And take another deep breath in. And feel that breath, how beautiful it is. And as you exhale, let go of everything that didn't serve you today. Just let it go. Take another deep breath in. And hold it. And now let it go. And thank you for joining us in that brief breathing exercise. And today, on this episode, we have the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Orest Komarnyckyj, a remarkable individual who has transitioned from being an oral surgeon to becoming a successful podcaster. He calls himself the old guy at 70. And he is not only embracing his new role, but is also dedicated to helping older men create kick-ass lives for themselves and their loved ones. Dr. Orest, broadcasting from his vibrant home in Las Vegas, Nevada, is on a mission to mentor men through the complexities of life, drawing from his own wealth of experiences, both successes and lessons learned. With a light-hearted and edgy style, he tackles a variety of topics, often venturing into the uncomfortable, and leaves his guests and listeners surprised and entertained with his humor and candidness. Join us as we dive into a conversation with Dr. Orest, prepared for unexpected insights, a few laughs, and perhaps a reminder that it's never too late to pursue your passion and live a fulfilling life. Dr. Orest, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the gracious introduction.
You're welcome. And is there anything else you would like to add?
The only thing I'd add right now is that one of the things that I am doing is I am a men's life coach.
Okay.
And I work with men most of the time who are financially successful, who have issues in their relationships with their spouses, their kids, and fitness.
Okay. What led you into life coaching?
Uh, Somebody that I knew suggested, who knew me relatively well, suggested I do it. I've actually had several people tell me I should do this. And so I I started this about a couple of years ago, and it's been an interesting journey. I have conversations with men that they would never have with anyone else,
Hmm.
including their spouse.
Hmm.
And so it's sometimes they're brutal, sometimes people are crying, sometimes they're laughing. But my job is to sift out the bullshit and make sure that they're speaking honestly.
Wow.
And sometimes that requires me to be very direct.
I'm sure.
That sounds really interesting. I've met a lot of life coaches that focus on helping women, but I think it's so fabulous to meet somebody who's focused on helping men because I think that there's, as they're building their careers, they're so focused on that. And as you say, maybe some of the other areas don't work out quite the way that they wanted. So having a safe space to brainstorm and go through their emotions and, talk these things through is fantastic. I think more men need it.
Yeah. Missy, it's actually not a safe space. I don't want anybody to think it's safe. It is not safe. It is full of confrontation. And it's simply because a lot of times when I start off with coaching a man, they're often lying. Okay. And the person that they're lying to the most is to themselves. And so that is a very confrontational exercise. And until you can start telling yourself the truth, you don't stand a chance of turning your life around.
And that leads me, you partially answer my next question about what is the greatest challenge that you have encountered in life coaching. And you just identified one. One is men being honest. And what do you think is the reason for that?
We've all been taught to put a brave face forward, to kind of, don't tell the truth. The worst places for people not to tell the truth is at churches. They're lying. A lot of men are just lying. They're up there pretending they're being devout. Maybe your pastor's pretending to being devout while he's having an affair with a parishioner. All those things. So, people lie. Both men and women lie, but I work focus exclusively on men, and so you have to get past that. You have to have a uncomfortable, honest dialogue, and a lot of times it is uncomfortable. And I'm not. To be real honest, at the end of the day, um, this may sound hard, but it actually works. Um, my coaching is result oriented. When we start, we have some very specific measurable targets. And quite frankly, I don't care about your feelings. My job as a coach is not to care about your feelings. My job is to help you as a man get the results that you want in your life. And your feelings, more often than not, are often getting in the way of you getting the results because you're so focused on your damn feelings. And when people focus on their feelings a lot, they end up having victim conversations in their head. And they start blaming everyone else except themselves. So quite often they don't take responsibilities. And, for some people, there's a big payoff in being a victim.
Mm.
You tell your story, you get some sympathy, people acknowledge you, this and that, oh, that's too bad, I feel so sorry for you. Screw that. That gets you no further along to getting what you want out of your life. That is, the common term is enabling. That is enabling. And I was reading something today, and part of it is that the bigger thing you want to accomplish, the harder the obstacles are.
Hmm.
Big things require overcoming big challenges and obstacles, and that quite often is painful. And often, most of the time, when you want to get something, when you want to get a reward, you have to consistently do stuff that you don't want to do. Okay. There's, 50% of the time, you got to do shit that you don't want to do. I get it. Some days I like to go to the gym and work out. I've been a gym rat for many years, for several decades. But there are days that I really don't want to go to the gym. I just assume stay home and sleep longer. But I do, just because I'm committed to the result.
Thank you for that. How difficult is it to get a man who have been socialized to be macho and masculine and not in touch with their emotion. And once they're successful, their ego is on the throne.
I don't think that, first of all, I want men to be in touch with their masculinity because that's what makes a man. Otherwise, they're no longer a man. And the, I mean, if you want to look at a group of people that are emotional and cry at the drop, not at the drop of the hat, but cry regularly, you look at UFC fighters, win or lose, half the time after the end of the fight, they're crying. They're crying with joy. They're crying with shame, whatever. But those guys are pretty masculine and they really show their emotions. They wear them on their sleeve. They're right out there. So I'm not a big believer in, matter of fact, I know for a fact that masculinity is not an issue. It's actually the lack of masculinity that's an issue. It's the lack of men not taking responsibility for their lives, not taking responsibility for the relationships that they've created, not taking responsibility for the relationships with their wives, with their kids. Those are the things that I think are more of an issue. And yeah, there are times that you have to say set priorities, but the priorities that you set, let's say if you set your priorities for your business, that doesn't mean those priorities are 24/7 for 5 years in a row. You can adjust your priorities. My wife and I talk about this. We talk about how do we decide who's primary in a situation. And sometimes, depending on what's going on, sometimes she's primary. Sometimes I'm primary, depending on what's going on, and she supported me, and vice versa. And sometimes we're both primary. And we've told the kid, one's 28, the other one's 25, and we told them a long time ago that, yeah, we love you, and we're here for you, but the most important person in our lives is my wife, and she says me. So the kids move out, which they have, thank God. They got great jobs. They make a shitload of money. Oh, shit, fuck, they make money. And so, a lot of what happens a lot of times is when couples get to the empty nest time, that's when divorce ensues. Last kid's off to college, and next thing you know, the divorce papers show up. And that's because people were in a very limited marriage that was almost non-dimensional. I know we have some friends, and they would always be sending pictures of the whole family on vacation. I never recall in the 25, 26 years that we've known them of ever seeing a picture of them, just the two of them on a vacation. In the end, of course, it was. So I think that people don't spend enough time on their relationship with their spouse. Same thing with their kids. So, one of the things I do with my kids is they both live out of town. Once a month, I pour myself a scotch, sit down, have a cigar, and we have a happy hour. Just the two, not mom, not her sister, just, either of my daughters. And if we do that, do we hit it every month? No, probably about 10 months out of the year. Sometimes life just gets in the way. Or if we had to go and visit them, like there's no point in me talking to them a week later because not much has changed. So that's a way to keep connected with your kids once they move out of the house and not become strangers.
Can you talk a little bit about the process when you're working with a man to kind of help him come face to face with the things that he's been hiding from himself? Because I sense that the process may be different in working with men than it is in working with women. So could you elaborate a little bit about kind of how you work with them and what the process is like?
Yeah, the first thing is to get a very clear, again, quantifiable inventory about where they are. And quantifiable in fitness, it usually 90% of the time it revolves around weight. Okay. I mean, it revolves around weight. In relationships, 90% of the time, it involves the lack of intimacy. And the lack of intimacy is very variable with people. I talk to men that have not had sex in a couple of years. I've talked to men who have sex twice a year, once a month, and on rare occasions, 2 or 3 times a week. See, that's very easily quantifiable. Say, okay, how often do you have sex a month? It's a number. It's not a feeling. It's not like, well, this and that. And then there's a series of questions like, do you always initiate or does she initiate? And then I get very personal. I said, does she enjoy having sex with you? Does your wife enjoy having sex with you? Or does she just, especially this is really true, especially if you have very infrequent sex, like twice a year. Because usually by then, that's just mercy sex. The guy's been basically trying to wear his wife down, and she just kind of, okay, fine, go ahead. We can, I'll just lay here and wait for the pumping to be done, and then I'll be off. She's not particularly, a participant in it. She's just in the coaching group that I'm involved in. My coach, we call that without an interactive partner. Where female's not interactive. It's called vaginal masturbation. So that's there's no real pleasure for the women. There's not a lot. There's kind of like maybe temporary, pleasure for the guy, but feeling very good and doesn't want her coming back for more. It's part of the whole thing is guys say like, oh, when we talk about intimacy, oh, you need to talk to my wife. I go, well, no, dude, I don't need to talk to your wife. I need to talk to you. I can't control what your wife does. And by the way, you can't fucking control what she does either. Okay, let's be very clear. But there's some things that you've stopped doing that have caused this lack of interest and intimacy in your relationship. And some of it also has to do, a lot of it, and guys shake their head, and I think probably women would too. Kids kill intimacy. It's just a reality. And if mom is staying home with a screaming, crying 2 and 3-year-old, that is, by the time, if they have kind of like the traditional nuclear family where, dad goes off to work and mom stays at home, which is not very common these days anymore. But, she's going to be drinking vodka if he comes home at 5, she's having her first drink at 5:05. Here, you take care of them. So there are things that guys can do, improve their level of intimacy. What you do depends on where you are in terms of your start. Okay, if you're having sex once a week and twice a week or a little bit more, that's fairly easy. That's actually fairly easy to deal with. But if you're having sex once a year, that is a bigger issue. And there are things that you should do soon. And I have a on-demand course, a video that goes 7 weeks. But the last module is basically, it's titled How to Get Laid More Frequently Without Begging. And so consequently, there are things, and no, I'm not going to share any of those because you have to buy my course.
One question I have is, what about the other side of it when, for example, there's like health issues? So, for example, the wife maybe has a health issue that is interfering with it, and or the husband, he's had, a heart attack or prostate cancer or something, and he's not able to, or where does that fit in, and how do you deal with that side of the equation?
That's a very real thing. I've never known of a heart attack preventing anyone from having sex or intimacy. But the deal is, the reality of it is the younger, that actually erectile dysfunction in a younger guy is a sign of heart disease. So that's one thing. But as far as people have erectile dysfunction, there's all sorts of therapies out there that are available today. And, the pills only work for a while. And I speak from experience. I mean, you start off with 5 milligrams, like say 10, then you're 20, and then you're 40, and you're going like, okay, really going to take 80 milligrams of Cialis? It's just kind of, so you lose back. And the other thing is, heaven forbid that you have too much to drink and you fall asleep and your window of opportunity is gone because they're only good for a few hours. But believe me, I've researched this quite a bit. I remember I've actually did an interview on my podcast with a urologist where we talked significantly about erectile dysfunction. So yeah. So, all those things are dealable. There are probably some women's issues that are more of a challenge. Okay, so like I said, I go places where people don't normally go to. I've become kind of a semi-expert on lubricants for sex. Okay. If you are getting your lubricant at a big box store, more likely than not, there's stuff in there that actually dries out vaginas.
Hmm.
There's chemicals in there. And let me give you I'll just promote an affiliate link. Go to the standard.academy/lube. And this is one of the lubes that I did an interview with a gynecologist who talked about. She gets a lot into the lubes thing and talk about all the chemicals that are issues. But that one's actually a very good one. And it's an important issue. So lubricant's an issue because a lot of times when you get older, post-menopause, whatever, sex is painful. Part of the pain is because of dryness. Use a crappy lubricant, you're not going to solve that over time. You're going to have more dryness than you are going to have less dryness. And so why would a woman want to have sex if it hurts? Okay. I totally get that. So that's not a good thing. So those are kind of like the two biggest issues, especially for older couples, is erectile dysfunction and lubricants, and then there's libido. For women, I think it's important for women to be on hormone replacement therapy.
Hmm.
A lot of reasons too. I did a 2-episode podcast. Betsy Yurth, who's a longevity doctor, and we talked a great deal about the myths surrounding a hormone replacement therapy. And there's a lot of myths that are basically phony, especially about hormone replacement therapy causing breast cancer. That's just absolutely false. And there's lots of research out there that shows that, but most physicians aren't that. I hate to tell you, folks, most physicians aren't that well informed. The medical model that exists now in the United States is not particularly geared towards health or treating you as a patient. If you are seeing a new doctor and that doctor spends 15 minutes with you on your initial appointment, he or she are probably working corporation for a private equity group that bought a big practice. And their job is to go into a room, fill out a whole bunch of diagnosis codes, write some prescriptions, and move on. And they have an MBA telling them how much they need to produce every hour to basically to stay on course and meet the targets, the goals of the corporation in owning that practice. So that is not an uncommon model these days. A lot of the doctors that I interview have what they call concierge practices, and their initial appointment is an hour and a half with you. Yeah. So I mean, the follow-up visits aren't going to be that long, but their initial appointment is an hour and a half with you. And so, and the same thing's true about for men. I've been on testosterone for over 25 years, and I can't imagine my life without it. I think men are crazy not to be on testosterone. And there's again, testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. Testosterone does not cause heart disease. Doesn't do all those things that it supposedly do. My primary care doctor used to argue with me, and now I just give him shit because he's been my primary care doctor for about 30 years. But he's showing signs of low testosterone, including losing a lot of muscle mass, and his shoulders are caving in on his chest. And I give him shit about it when I see him. He doesn't like me sometimes. I can tell.
Thank you so much for joining us, Orest. This was really interesting and enlightening for two ladies to learn a lot more about what it's like on the other side, so to speak, and very enlightening. And thank you so much for taking the time, spending it with us. And I encourage everyone to listen to your podcast and get some more insight on some of these great topics.
I would encourage people to go to, like I said, if they want to find out more of me, go to www.thestandard.academy. And that's my website, and it has a lot of information. You can access, get in contact with me through that website if you are so inclined to do so. And yeah,
Thank you so much. That's it. That's a wrap.